Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Gentry's Journey. I'm your host, Carolyn Coleman, and we have our guest, Caroline the Creative. And we met on the Book Slam, and it is a joy to have her today. We're going to start off with an inspirational scripture, and then I'm going to let her introduce herself. Caroline is a poet and an educator. So, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. I kind of like that one. Okay, now Caroline, if you will introduce yourself to us. I know you have, I have read your bio. You are full of hobbies, but go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, please.
I'm Caroline underscore Creative Corner on Instagram. This is my little book, Poetic Self-Portrait. And actually, I bought the publishing rights from the original publisher, so it was taken off of Amazon by them. So I have to republish it to get it back out into the world. So I think I have like 2 copies left.
Okay.
And I had written poems. I didn't even start writing poems until I was 51. And a guy came to my class. Hello, escape artist. A guy came to my class to teach my third graders how to use bait buckets to catch a poem. So we had we were fishing for poetry and had little 4-word groups all over this page. And you could choose a bait bucket or a group to help you start a poem. And I remember when I was in school, it was just, here's a blank piece of paper and write a poem. And I hated it. So I was 51 when I discovered writing prompts. And I was like, yes. So I wrote along with my students, and they were my audience that first day. So my poems for them were, towards third graders. And then I discovered the poetic world and Instagram in 2020. And Henry X, who was Self-Created 124, had said, "Do you write poems?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, are you posting them?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you need to post them." I said, "Well, let me just send you an email with a couple of." He's like, "Yes, you need to post them." Yes. And so I did, and then people started liking them. And I think because I don't write all love poems or all angst, that people enjoy the variety, and people started following me, and it was kind of fun. And so here I am 3, 4 years later.
That is wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. Now, you're retired educator from the public school system
Yes.
of South
29,
Louisiana.
29 years.
Great. And thank you for your service. The children needed you at that time and still do. Um, so now you're doing so many creative things. You're writing poetry, you're quilting, you're knitting, you're gardening, and now you're
And I'm
learning how
learning
to
to crochet.
crochet.
Yeah, I'm learning to
Yes.
crochet. And when we visited my son the other day, he taught me how to start a cap. It won't be as fancy as Escape Artist. If you see her cute little cap she makes. And Tiana, this is Carolyn Colvin. I met her in Clubhouse from a couple of years ago.
Nice to meet you, Tiana.
Tiana is a very talented poet too.
That's great. That is great. Now, your book titled Poetic Self-Portrait.
Yes.
Where did you get your ideas for your poetry?
Well,
I know you talked about the bait bucket.
Yeah. Well, most of my poems were about me, not all. I mean, some are historical, and some are just observing nature around me. But I felt like a lot of them were about my life. And since I had this little portrait that I drew of myself, I said, well, I'll just use that for my cover and
Okay.
poetic self-portrait. So that's how I got
Well, that is good. And you mentioned your age on when you started, which is important. It's very important. But there is no age limit on learning. There's no age limit on discovery. There's no age limit on processing what you do. uh, I was a part of a book discussion, and this lady, I think she may have been like 82. It was her birthday, the day of the discussion, which was bad, which was good, but it was
Hmm.
also her birthday. So, and that was the first time she had authored a book. So it was
Hmm.
like, win, win, win for her. And
Yes,
everybody was so excited for her. And naturally, she was excited for herself. So I always say age is truly just a number. If it's something you want to do, get it done. Sometimes we can't do things earlier in life, maybe for lack of maturity, maybe for lack of time, maybe for lack of being an instructor, raising children,
yes,
being a housewife, all of those things, because you're all things to a lot of people at that time. So you're just trying to get from day to day activities. So I think when we start to slow down, we meet and to rediscover ourselves. What do you think about that?
true. And while I'm talking about that, I want to show y'all. I am a newbie gardener too. So this little area that I'm about to show you used to be, well, this corner with the siding is where the pine tree fell on our house with Hurricane Ida. And
Okay.
now it is my garden. And I've got buku tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, and I've got this is called the Three Sisters, and it's squash and corn and beans planted together. I learned about it in a uh, the book Braiding Sweetgrass was written by an indigenous woman.
Hmm.
How the indigenous peoples plant squash, beans, and corn together instead of just separating them into different fields like the pilgrims thought they should do. So it's kind of just an experiment with me. I found some seeds from rareseeds.com and got some Cherokee Trail beans and pink corn and some little green squash that scalloped on the edge. So we'll see. It's my little experiment.
Okay, so this is the first time you've tried that part of gardening.
Yes, I mean, I have planted tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are usually the ones that I do best with. But we planted some Cherokee tomatoes last year, which are like heirloom and big and purple and really delicious. So I planted some more of those this year. I probably, in my enthusiasm, put everything too close together. So
Well,
we'll see.
that's
We'll
I mean,
see.
it's not like you were a professional gardener. You did the best you knew how, okay? Um,
And we're already eating salads with my spinach and tomatoes. So that's
so
fun.
so you're winning. You're winning. And that is wonderful. So like I say, I did tomatoes one year, couldn't do them as the way I wanted to because the squirrels were always digging them up. Okay. So I was
Mhm.
like, I don't know if this is a good look for my neighbors to see me chasing squirrels or squirrels chasing me because they won't stay out of my garden. So I moved the garden to the front, which is full sun, and they flourished very well there. Okay. I didn't have to fight the squirrels as bad. And
Mhm.
then the little ground chipmunks would come
Uh,
and they would take one bite out of the tomato and run. So I was like,
mhm.
I got to find a remedy for you. So it is a challenge, but they were the best tomatoes. That was my first time planting a vegetable. I do plants, but first time doing a vegetable. And I gave away so many because I had, I guess, a bumper crop. I, so
That's
that is,
good.
it was good and it was exciting. And I felt so rewarded because I was able to do it. I
Mhm.
was,
And I'm
I
trying
was
not to
able to
do
do it.
any kind of poison on them or anything. So I'm
You
out there.
not my,
I'm squeezing bugs, between the leaves and stuff.
I didn't even have that thought. I put nothing. They were truly organic. I put nothing on them because I'm kind of like you. I didn't want to deal with that, especially being a newbie. But I
Mhm.
haven't done it again. I plan on doing it again, but I just don't know when. Like I said, I have too much shade on the back for it. So they're not going to flourish because I've tried too many times. But on the
Mhm.
front, I'm just not sure. Um, Now let's get back to your poetry. Do you
Okay.
have any specific techniques or rituals to get you started on a
Well,
particular piece?
some of them, when I first started writing with those bait buckets, and I was, doing it with my children in mind, um, I chose a bait bucket called Photo, Family, Smiles, and Imperfect. And
Okay.
so I wrote this little short one for my third graders. And I tried to write things that they could learn from. When I was 12, I was tall and thin. Friends from out of town visit. We 7 children had to pose for a New Orleans snapshot. Parents want to remember the day. Smile. I hated that photo. Their children, though my age, were all much shorter than I. My height seemed an imperfection. So I really enjoy using those prompts. But since I've started with Instagram, so many people are putting up so many good prompts, and I still have, um, those bait buckets to choose from, but I do tend not to use them as much as a crutch as I did at first.
Okay.
And
But you
oh, go ahead. I'm part of Cynical Insomniacs Misfits group, which is where I met the lovely Tiana. And she gives us prompts on Sunday afternoons.
okay.
And so we do that. And I've learned from Monday nights with Ramrock Speaks, they do prompts for 10-minute writes, and everybody writes for 10 minutes, and then you can go and read it yourself, or you can send it to one of the hosts and they'll read it. And that has been very inspirational. It's amazing to see the variety that comes from that one word or that one phrase.
Again, to the audience, Carolina and I met on the book slam where we had opportunity to read our work. And her poetry, it was something about the pen, um, the power of the pen or something of that nature. But her poetry was always on point. We all enjoyed. Everybody was not a poet there, so we had different genres, but that's where we met, and that's where she would read. We would read. We would all read. Take the time to do that. Um, it was a fun time. So
It was.
it
I'm
was.
sorry that room ended, but
I am too.
I still keep up with Melanie Johnson, and she lives right in Natchez, which is not too far from me.
Okay.
And Reese the storyteller came to one
Hmm.
of my poetry workshops at the library, so
Oh,
I've
that's
met her.
great.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It is. Yeah, met so many friends on the book slam. Reese, Melanie, myself, Jackie, Laquita,
Hmm. And
Dr.
then didn't y'all write a
Thelma.
book together?
Yeah,
Aren't
that's
y'all in a
what. Yeah,
book
I'm
together?
trying. Yeah, I'm trying to name the seven, and there's a newbie. I don't remember her being on the book slam, Dr. Audrey Ann. So the seven of us are doing an anthology. So we don't have a true release date at this point in time, but it's Christian nonfiction.
Hmm.
So yes, that's where I met all of you. I think I was kind of new to the group, but it was addicting because there was so much talent coming through the book slam. Not to say that there's not another platform out there similar to that, but that's where we met.
Hmm. And you really make such good connections because you're really sharing so much from your heart. That's what I told my students that when you're writing poetry, you're sharing from your heart. So we're all going to be very accepting of each other, and they were. And when one year I did it with my granddaughter's fifth grade class, and that's a pretty vicious age of beginning at that age. And they were so respectful of each other. And one little boy who was overweight wrote about, "In my world, there are no bullies." And it was like the kids in the class looked at him for the first time, like, "Oh, he's a person with feelings." So
Hmm.
it's really, just I think it's a great way for us to all get to know each other and meet each other and learn
Yes,
about,
because you get to know or feel a person's inner thoughts, how they're really feeling.
Hmm.
and it does give you a glance inside who they really are.
And you don't just usually get that in your everyday conversations with your
No, ma'am.
kids.
No, that's not going
Mhm.
to happen.
Mhm.
Okay, so how do you approach the use of language in your poems?
Well, I'm glad that I've had some excellent teachers and some excellent vocabulary building workbooks that we used when I was in school. That I think my vocabulary is strong, and I do some alliteration and some rhyming, but most of mine is free verse, which was encouraged that day that Fort came to our class because he said when third graders try to rhyme, it ends up being forced. So he just said, just write what you're feeling without worrying about rhyming. And so I kind of just got into that, and most of mine are like
Okay. Now, do you feel as though poetry, or what role does poetry have in our society?
well, I'm learning so much more than I did in school because in school I really, it was all those old people like Wordsworth and Longfellow and and I just didn't enjoy it. And I took a class in college and we were supposed to translate these poems and I hated it. And the teacher didn't like the way I did it. And it was like, that's when I was like, okay, no more poetry for me until I was 51. So, but yeah, I forgot what you asked because I think I got off my tangent.
No, you're fine. I said, what role do you think poetry plays in our society?
Well, I think that in our Instagram poetic world and just in the poetry world in general, it helps us to see each other's feelings and we learn from each other. Whereas if you're just reading a story or even a biography, oh, I'm reading King, A Life by Ige, E-I-G, which is about Martin Luther King.
Hmm.
And it's 20 hours to listen to. I've got about 5 hours left. It's very well researched and I'm really learning a lot. And I think about all the facts that I'm learning, but I see so much poetry in it too because it's my life. I mean, he was starting his journey when I was 3 years old in 1953.
Okay.
Was when he first started, got in the priesthood or
Hmm.
preacherhood or pastorhood, whatever you call it.
Get you.
And
I understand exactly what you're saying. This is okay because we're literary beings, so we have so many words in our head. know, I know there's no disrespect taken. I'm sure there was no disrespect meant, but we have so many words in building up in this literary world that we're in, So no, I understand exactly what you're saying. And I think in order to hone anyone's craft, you need to do research. You still need to listen. You still need to read. You still need to, yeah, form ideas. And I guess that's why you stay connected to the poetry
my nose
world.
itches.
It's
Sorry.
okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm
You're
outside with all
That's
these
what I'm getting ready to
plants.
say. You're outside with all the plants and the pollen.
Yeah.
But that's why I think you stay connected to the poetry world, the literary world, because you still want to think, you still want to grow. Is that not it?
Yes, I still want to learn. I mean, I'm 74, but I'm learning things every day. And as I'm reading his book, I'm thinking about the history that I've lived. So I was 7 and learning how to read and saw the signs on the water fountain and on the bathroom in the TG&Y or the Woolworths that said colored. So,
Hmm.
I remember asking my mother, what is that? Because
Hmm.
and she explained to me. And then when I was 7, that same year was when Ruby Bridges entered the schools of New Orleans, and
Hmm.
we lived in New Orleans, so it was on the news, and all these adults are screaming at this little girl, and I was like,
Hmm.
why are they yelling at that little girl?
Hmm.
And so Mom explained it as best she could, but those were my first impressions of discrimination
Sure.
and I didn't realize it at the time, but that was it.
Well, you were a child.
yeah, I was 7 years old when we were
Absolutely.
bridges.
Yeah. So that is basically, as a child, you think as a child. A lot of times you don't see or understand what you don't know and what you're
Mhm.
not taught. So that sort of explains that.
And
Now, do
and I
you?
grew up. Oh, excuse me. And I grew up the first few years of my life where Daddy was a farmer in Georgia,
Mhm.
and and I had black women who helped care for me while Daddy was working and Mama was houseworking and stuff. And so my only impression was of love and support. So
Sure.
it was so different to come see these signs and this yelling.
Yeah, that is our world. Very diverse, that is for sure. But the innocence um had to leave rather early, or the knowledge
Mm-hmm.
of what's going on had to come in at a very early time.
True. Mm.
Now, can
And
you
I
share
taught.
any? Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
was
Go
going to
ahead.
say one thing. When I taught preschool, it broke my heart to think of my precious little black students learning about discrimination. And I
Hmm.
knew it was coming. I knew it was in their future, but it just broke my heart for these
Hmm.
little children. Mm-hmm.
I get that. But everyone has to slowly open up to see what the world is really like. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
in your home. It's not just in your front yard. It's not just a block down the street. We all have to come to that realization of what's out here. And some days I think we
Right.
still don't know what all is out here. But social media kind of has helped push push that. You see more than you want to see, and you know more than you want to know. But you still
And
need
the
to do your
extreme, yeah, and the extremes on both ends are so
absolutely.
distressing. And
It is.
I'm moderate, middle of the road. I am a Republican, but I'm a
Hmm.
moderate Republican. I'm not some crazy right wing racist that a lot of people would just assume.
Hmm.
And I felt just my career as a teacher in the public schools of Louisiana pretty much said it for me. I walk the walk instead of just talking the talk.
True. Okay, that's good to know. Now, are there? I know you talked about some of the older poets, but are there some poets that influenced you or inspired you?
Actually, a couple of years ago, Ramon, who of Ramrock Speaks, had a prompt for April for Poetry Month to write a poem in the style of your favorite poet.
Hmm.
And since I taught preschool for all those years, Dr. Seuss was the one that came to my mind. So I wrote a really cute poem about in that style. So enjoyed
I do understand, but who doesn't remember Dr. Seuss? Um,
that. and,
now,
and I
poet.
like I like Edward Allan Poe's were always interested. I mean, I haven't
Mhm.
read all of his works, but the basic ones that were in our textbooks and things, and people discuss them on Instagram, and so I've learned a little bit more.
Now, I was a big literature person, but I was not a big poetry person. I kind
Exactly.
of felt it had to rhyme, and I just could not get it together. And when we would break down poetry in the classroom, it started making sense, but I just never grasped the concept. Let me just
Exactly.
read. Let me just read. Let me read the story, read the book, and let me
Okay.
explain it to you.
Yeah.
That was my
Okay.
take on it. Okay, but there are some people who were truly gifted and talented, and I would love to know what they're doing now because we had such a huge class. It's just not. It's very hard to keep up, even though we're trying.
Are you a
I
teacher too?
no. Well, I
Okay.
do nursing students. I'm an
Okay.
adjunct
Oh.
professor,
Oh, that's
and
right. I
yeah,
remember.
and I have taught medical assistants, nursing assistants, LPN. So I've taught a kind of across the board when it comes to that. But so our stuff is medicine. It's not about poetry. It's not about literature. It's about I take care of a patient. what to look for, signs and symptoms. But that is still, I'd rather be a positive influence in whatever I do.
Yes, exactly. When
It's
I,
not I'm the
oh, go
teacher
ahead.
and you're going to
Yeah.
listen to me. No, no, we're going to talk about this. We're going to make this make sense before the end of the class. And if we have to do another class on it, we'll do another class on it.
Hmm.
So
When
that's how you get to them.
I graduated in 68 and I went to my 50th reunion a couple of years ago. And my mother taught English where I went to school. And this woman walked up to me and she said, I know you're your mother's daughter because you look just like her.
Hmm.
And I want you to know that your mother brought literature to life for you. And every hour in her class was the best hour of every day. And it gives me the chills and every time I meet a teacher, I tell them the story.
And that's wonderful because
Mhm.
as much as I used to love to read, when I did literature, I was always great at English. But when I did lit in the eighth grade, I had the most phenomenal. She was English and lit. Now, we didn't
Mhm.
have a instructor for each one, but
Mhm.
she woke up that part. Now, I've been reading across all genres before then, probably some genres I shouldn't have been reading, but I enjoyed reading them. But in the eighth grade, Miss Tyner made lit come alive. She made literature come alive, and I often talk about um, Pip Great Expectations, with Miss Havisham. As you can see, I
Yeah.
still remember that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the ending was so profound. I was like, wow. And we had to take it bit by bit. We could not just, read the whole chunk because we had to discuss it. And she just made it come alive for me. I just really enjoyed her class. And I don't know. I'm not in the public school system or the private school system
Mhm.
as an instructor to mold minds, except for on that medical level. But I would want to think that teachers had a true buy-in to educating students when I was growing up. I honestly
Yeah.
believe that. Now, sure, some of the substitutes, they probably wanted to be an instructor, but you were just a substitute and you didn't have the buy-in that the everyday instructor had. And yes, they had to be
Exactly.
firm. You have to be
Yeah.
firm
But
because
they didn't have to go home and write lesson plans.
no,
They
they
have
did
to,
not. They did not. They did not. And they were not the face that you saw every day.
no.
But I honestly believe the majority of them enjoyed doing what they did. And it showed because even when they
Hmm.
were firm, when they were stern, they had to be. Because, boys did more challenging than girls when I was in
Oh
school.
yeah.
So
Oh
boys
yeah.
can be more challenging. So
Even 3-year-old boys.
oh, I'm sure nowadays, yes, but I have been the room mom and all that stuff over the years. You can pretty much get the little ones in order, but they think because you're new, even the little ones, they think they can get
Hmm.
away with some things.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
One little girl erased this guy's name off his paper. So, I could see his name very clearly. So she didn't do a very good job. But I'm like, how are you thinking about this in the second grade? So
True.
you will get some surprises, okay? I never would have thought about that in the second grade to erase someone's name off the paper.
No. No.
And it was obvious. And so I kept it for the instructor when she returned from her meeting and she was like, what do you do? I was like, I don't know, but I'm gonna sit here and watch.
I want to see. I want to learn.
I do because when the mom came, she was stunned. Like, how did she learn this? And we were like, I had nothing to say. I mean, I'm just in the corner to learn. But I'm just saying, even the parent, the look on her face, she was like, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. She said, I'll handle all this when I get home. And this won't happen again. And I was like, where did she get that from? But the world may never know. Okay.
Yeah. I think I think as a teacher, it's fun to see my students from 20, 30, 40 years
Absolutely.
ago
Absolutely.
grown and see what they're pursuing. Just the other day, I posted a picture because one of the students I taught preschool to became a lawyer, but then she really loved to bake. And she was doing a blog and she got discovered by Food Network, I think, and
Hmm.
was featured on some kind of bake off, like the American version of the British Bake Off. And then she just decided she wasn't going to be a lawyer. And she's been featured in several TV shows and magazines. And her Instagram page is Foodie in New York. And she's got a beautiful book that I gave a copy to my grandchildren for Easter. So when I was there last week, I saw, I got the hardback with the spiral binding because it's easier to use cookbooks like that. And
Sure.
it's beautiful. The quality of the pages are so much crisper than something that we published from ourselves on Instagram. And it was I love seeing that. And one of my students is now a neurosurgeon, and one works for the Department of Transportation as an engineer. So it's and one's an English teacher. So you just one's a head chef at a local restaurant. So it's fun to see what they pursue as they grow.
Absolutely. Jackie has joined us and she said hello. But it is good to see how we all disperse and how we figure out life.
Mm-hmm.
Even as students, there sometimes you don't know a person has a talent until it's displayed. And when some of the students had to get together and sing, I was like, "Oh, I never would have thought." I
Mm-hmm.
never would have thought they would have had such a beautiful voice. Um, so it's something to be said by that. And your student who's now you thought was going to be a lawyer, now she is baking.
Mm-hmm.
Is fabulous because you never know what gifts are really in an individual.
Well, if you ever get to interview Escape Artist on the screen, she is a young mama, a poet, a very creative crocheter and maker of designer bags, and a welder. So she's got this really interesting life, and she's young, and I feel like as I listened to her interview recently on a different one, I identified so much with her young creative self that felt like a
And
daughter.
I can see where you would because you're creative, she's a creative. So yes, absolutely. That probably can be very doable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when do you decide a poem is completed?
Uh, Sometimes it's just from the limit on a prompt, like 40 words or 15 words. And then sometimes I can just go on for pages and pages. One of the poems in my book is called Crying Woman. And the prompt from Cynical Insomniac was to write about a photo in history. And I had a big photo album from World War II, and it showed this woman in Czechoslovakia saluting to Hitler's soldiers, and she she had her hand knitted sweater on. You could tell by looking at it, and she had a wadded cloth in her hand, and she like obviously putting this wet cloth to her tears, and so I wrote a poem based on the history that I knew about the Nazis, but I also brought it to her personality and her clothes and her wedding ring, and was her son in the service of the Nazis now, and had her business been destroyed, and was her Jewish doctor still living. So I just kind of took it to her, but just based on the details I saw in the photo.
Okay. So when you decide that it is complete, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter about the length. It's just if you feel as though you've said everything you need to say in that poem.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's the
And
creative.
yeah, and that's one of the challenging things about being on Ramon's 10-minute rights, because everybody just rips out these brilliant pieces in 10 minutes, and it's quite incredible, the thoughts that come out in a short amount of time.
Do you ever experience writer's block when you're doing your poetry?
Kind of. Sometimes I'll just like I haven't written in about 2 weeks, and now I've got some prompts that I'm sitting on that I'm like want to work on, and then we've been out of town for a week, and then I came home and I've got chores to catch up on and things like that. But yeah, I wanted to sit down and write today, but I ended up running errands. So
Sure. We still have a life, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And my
And
husband's kind of jealous of my poetry taking up too much of my time. So I kind of sneak it in, and he's still sleeping.
well, so you're a poet, Jack is a poet, and the escape artist is a poet, So I have
Mhm.
three poets in the audience today. And that's a beautiful thing. And I don't know if Jackie did any of her poetry while we were on the book slam. I can't
No,
remember right off.
I know she read from her book, which I did
Yes.
buy
Oh,
and
cool.
received it. Yeah, I received it, whenever it came out a couple of months ago.
Hmm.
Really good.
Yes, it is a good book.
Growing up in the rough streets of Chicago.
And it's a resilience, it's survival. Um, it
And
did not
meeting the
keep
man of her
her.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It did not keep her from doing and accomplishing so much. It did not, so it's as my mom says, you can do whatever you want to do when if you really want to do it.
hmm
So yes, we could cast blame, but how much quality time are you utilizing by blaming someone else when you can be
true.
working on yourself? And that, and so yeah, she is truly for lack of a better term, the poster child for that type, that resilience and wanting to
hmm
have, more than what she was dealt. And that's great. Now, what
Well,
advice would you give any aspiring poets?
well, give yourself permission to be a learner. Don't feel like you have to be like the star poet. I mean, my sister-in-law's son writes poetry, and I've seen some that he's written for her, but he was like, "There's no way that I'm going to put my poems out on any media." He's like, but they're really well done,
Hmm.
and they're for his mother for Mother's Day or something, but they're beautiful. When you were just talking about self-determination, and that's one of the first poems in my book. Could I read it?
Absolutely. Now, I was going to ask you to do the true
Oh,
before we left. Yes, I want you to read
okay.
some of your poetry.
All right. This is called Childhood Self-Determination. And I don't know if you can see this photo, but it's just a picture of me dressed up, looking like a princess.
Hmm.
Until I found this photo, I had no idea of the inner strength with which my mother had empowered me when she had directed, "You do it." When I had been in third grade, our school had held a Mardi Gras ball, an annual New Orleans celebration, an opportunity for a money-making event. Enticement: six students who sold the most tickets would be on the royal court. I had been determined to sell the most and dress in the garments of a queen. I had announced to my mother, "I want to sell tickets." "Okay, you'll have to do it yourself." With purposeful steps, I set off with tickets tucked in a large envelope and proceeded door to door, only instructed not to go inside anyone's house and to be home well before winter's twilight. In 1958, tickets had been 50 cents. I still remember Mrs. Mattingly's name, very impressed at her $3 donation, no tickets required. With images of silver crowns, worlds of splendor and beauty as my goal, I had waited patiently at neighbors' doors. My independent sales had been third highest, not the top seller, but still on the court. My mother, not yet a teacher, talented homemaker on a budget, had made my dress. Yards and yards of itchy tulle had been gathered round my waist, now protected by a cloth diaper. That was the days of cloth diapers,
Mm-hmm.
Tiana. She had even created my crown of wire with strands of sequins, a scepter of styrofoam cane wrapped in pink ribbon. At the time, I had been disappointed that they hadn't been store-bought. Lipstick and curled hair had sufficed. Whenever I hear strains of the Blue Danube, I recall the sheer delight of standing on my daddy's feet. The court had danced around the gym floor, opening the night's entertainment by other classrooms of children. Not realizing then that Mama's voice assuring me of her pride in the fact that I've done it all by myself, not having aunts and grandmothers selling for me, as had the queens, had provided wings of strength for me, her daughter, to weave worlds of her own design, achieved through self-determination.
Oh,
Thank
that sounds great. That is. Now, I did get a glimpse of the picture, um, and I've seen similar pictures over the years. My mom's sisters and the grandparents, and how elegantly everyone would dress, especially for special occasions. But
Especially when our mothers were all sewing.
absolutely. But they put their hard-earned, they put their talent into it. They absolutely did. Now, Caroline, I have enjoyed having you on. Is there any final remarks that you would like to give any aspiring poets out there?
Well, I mean, write about your life and what you've lived. I mean, I've written about my brother's suicide. I've written about my sister's alcoholism. I've written about my husband's love. I've written about, the animals I see and flora I see. And I just, I write about my life. I don't feel like I have to force a subject, which is so much, especially in 74 years of living,
Okay,
from which to choose.
that is great. And you mentioned Jacqueline's book, and the title of it, Mountains Can't Rise Without Earthquakes. And
Mhm.
it's on her website and it's on Amazon. Um, so if anyone would love to pick that up, that's where you can get it. Caroline, you say you bought the rights to your book, so you have to
Mhm.
have them republished. You'll let us
Right.
know when they will be available.
Yes.
You have three left,
Yes.
right?
And all my poems from the book are on my page, but that was from like 2020 and 2021 that I did all that posting. So I've got 2.5 years more of poems written since then. So I
Oh,
need to
that's
work
great.
on a new book.
That's great. So that's the only book you have?
Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. So when you're ready, you'll put the second one into print or add to the first
Okay.
one.
Yes.
What is your plan? What is your plan for that?
Well, I thought about calling it reflections in self portrait or something like that. Sticking with the self portrait, but thinking about reflections on life and maybe doing that. I was wondering if Tiana has any questions that she wanted to ask.
I don't see any posted. She thanked
Okay.
you for letting us know about her and her gifts and her talents. And she
Okay.
said,
Definitely need to check it out.
uh-huh, I'm super excited about your creative endeavors. So, yeah, she thanked you for giving her that shout out. But if she has anything else, she can definitely put it in the chat. And well, hey, we'll gladly talk about it. Now, Caroline, what do you have planned for the rest of the day?
Well, I did some gardening this morning while it was cool, and once it gets hot, I have to go inside. I need to iron them. So, We just got back from our, a little trip to our sewing, so I've got laundry that's in the washer for me to take out and dry. And I made dinner last night, so we're having leftovers tonight. So
Smart woman, smart woman. Who
and
wants to?
Greg likes to cook too, so that's a big plus.
And that is a great thing. Now,
Mhm.
we're going to end with an inspirational quote. We always just thank God for all that He's done and all that He's going to do. We thank Him for the friendship and the fellowship. We just love Him so. Lord, these and other things we ask in your Son, or we say in your Son Jesus' name. Amen. But with you being the teacher and the poet, we're going to also close out with that. Let us remember one book, one pen, one child, and one teacher can change the world. For you poets out there,
And I enjoyed the interview. Thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate Tiana coming and keeping us company.
absolutely, absolutely. And I put my email in the chat so that she can reach out to me.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Thank
You
you.
have a beautiful view. So enjoy the rest of your day. Don't overdo it. And we'll talk soon. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, I forgot. Where can you be found? Tell them again.
Oh, Caroline _ Creative Corner on Instagram.
On Instagram. All right. Thank you, Caroline. And be sure to
Thank
keep
you.
us up when that book comes up. Okay.
I will. I will. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.